What's up? This is EJ Stewart. All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you. Well, how the turntables have... Rest in peace to all my ops. This crap is crap.
Let's go!
Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You are watching 40 Days and Counting, where I, EJ Stewart, do 2 live stream shows per week. One at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, one Friday, 8 a.m. I know this episode is starting a little late. Apologies for that. A little technical difficulty we had to get together, but we're all good to go. And this is going to be a great show. I know you probably hear my voice. You're probably like, what the hell? Why does EJ sound like that? Well, we got a lot to talk about today. Number one, back from my honeymoon. And shout out to my honeymoon. Shout out to the lovely couple of me and Andrea. As you guys know, I got married in June. Had our honeymoon in Mexico. Lovely, lovely, lovely time. It's why there wasn't any episodes of 40 Days and Counting last Friday or this past Tuesday, as we just got back on Tuesday, but it was obviously later in the evening. But as great as the time was, and actually had some pictures to show you guys, I can show you guys how we were rocking it out. There's your boy, championship out on the beach in Mexico. There's, of course, good eats. We'll get to the eating in a second because it's very relevant to why I sound like this. Also, there you go. That's the picture I was looking for. That was us in Mexico. Lovely, lovely, lovely time. Had an absolute blast. And it was as perfect as you could ask for most of the time that we were in Mexico. I'll give you guys one more picture showing us. There's us. Silent party, which maybe I'll talk about at the end of the show. Never been to the silent party. Very interesting experience. But the one thing I will say is what comes with travel comes with risk. And unfortunately, I got sick. Me and Andrea both got sick. Dealt with some pretty major stomach issues on the last day of us traveling back to New York. Last morning in Mexico was not pretty. We made it out of the hotel. We made it to the airport. We made it on the plane, and we made it back home. But it's been a really slow recovery since. There's stomach issues. I also picked up a cold while I was there towards the end as well. So that's why you're hearing some of the residue of that. The voice probably a little gone. I do my best to make this a fun show, but just to give you guys a heads up exactly on why perhaps I don't sound 100%. A little sick, but we're pushing through because we got to get back in gear. It's 40 days and counting. A lot has happened in the world of sports. In some ways, it feels like the sports landscape has changed in some ways. We're going to talk about the MLB trade deadline, where the biggest fish went to the most expected destination. You got Skubal, now a member of the Los Angeles Dodgers. He made his first start earlier in the week. He did take a loss, but he pitched really well against the Cubs earlier in the week. So we'll break down just kind of where this leaves Major League Baseball and what maybe the larger ramifications are beyond just this season with Skubal, the former star for the Detroit Tigers, landing with the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'll also talk about what we had going on in the NBA. Didn't think we'd talk much NBA, but Kevin Durant certainly made some interesting comments on social media when comparing this year's 2027 Philadelphia 76ers to the 2017 Golden State Warriors team he played on. And spoiler alert, how he depicted the players that he played with, not in the most flattering light. And one of those members seemed to have a problem with it. We'll talk about what Klay Thompson had to say about Kevin Durant's comments, stacking up the 2027 Sixers against the 2017 Golden State Warriors. We'll talk football. Hall of Fame game was last night. First of all, got to say, probably the most well-played Hall of Fame game I've ever seen. Like, I'm someone, and we'll talk about it when we get into it, I despise preseason football. So much so I forgot this game was on. Shout out to my brother Kendall. He texted me like to the detail about the game that I'll get into later. And I was like, oh, maybe let's check this out. And I actually ended up watching, and it was, for the half I watched, it was good football. It was entertaining, well played. And one guy stood tall, I think, for a lot of folks, maybe sparking some questions about the future in Arizona, and Carson Beck because of his performance in his first game. Stellar stuff from the former Miami and Georgia quarterback, so we'll talk about that. Unfortunately, we got to talk about Aaron Rodgers again. The fact that we only talk about this guy really because of stuff that's non-related to football, I think speaks to where he's at in his career at this point in time. But he did, pretty much open fire on his quote-unquote ops, that being Anthony Fauci. Apparently, that's also Diana Rossini and Mike Rabel. It's ESPN as a whole. He was very angry when he came on the Pat McAfee show this week. So we'll talk about those comments. We'll talk about Spider-Man. By the way, Spider-Man happened. Round of applause for Spider-Man. Breaking box office records everywhere. Highest domestic opening weekend in the history of this thing called movies, the cinema. Over $360 million in the first weekend. It's already crossed $1 billion, second fastest to cross $1 billion. This is going to go down as one of the most successful box office movies in the history of cinema. And again, I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised. Not by how talented, or rather how well the movie is put together. I love this movie. I just didn't know that with all the commentary regarding superhero fatigue and some of the stuff you hear on social media, dissing a lot of what Spider-Man, this Marvel MCU Spider-Man established in the first 3 movies. I just didn't expect you would see a number like this and success like this. And we'll talk about why that was, and we'll talk about what I thought about the movie. By the way, for those maybe looking for a New Generation Hero Talk review, talking about Spider-Man, obviously that's not out because we have not done that yet. I was in Mexico. But you can expect to see that probably within the coming days. So make sure you subscribe to New Generation Media YouTube channel. Make sure you, of course, subscribe to the podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network, to get our full review of Spider-Man. By the way, also some major news regarding the X-Men. We have a casting for Emma Frost. We have a casting for Scott Summers, Cyclops. And so we're really getting some momentum on what this is going to look like post Secret Wars with the new team, with the X-Men, with the MCU, adapting the mutants and bringing them fully into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So a lot to get to, man. There was another late story regarding Kawhi Leonard. Apparently this guy just has secret endorsement deals, just for lack of a better term, flying out of his ass. Like, it seems like every week there's another secret deal that we didn't know about that seems to always be linked to the Los Angeles Clippers. Now we got one dealing with a Jumbotron manufacturer. This is just where we're at with this guy. I'm starting to have real concerns about whether or not we're going to see this guy play at all next season. So much to do. I'm going to try my best to get through it. As you guys can hear, I'm struggling a little bit, but we're going to have fun. Have as much fun as we can. It's 40 days and counting. Streaming live multiple spots, including on YouTube. Of course, shout out to the YouTube fam. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. Also, streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. Make sure you follow me on X. Would appreciate that. Also, streaming live on Instagram. Shout out to the folks on Instagram checking out the show today. Shout out to my guy Eric in Ronkonkoma watching the show. Appreciate you. And, of course, streaming live on Buzzer. Check out Buzzer. Make sure you sign up. Just go to buzzer.com, bzzr.com, or head over to the Buzzer mobile app. So let's begin and let's talk about what happened last night, where I got to be honest, man, very impressed with what I saw from Cardinals rookie Carson Beck. As I said, the Hall of Fame game was last night. It's typically a game that people get excited about because it's the start of football and there's preseason and we're back into the swing of things a little bit. And I've always felt like it's one of those games where maybe you get excited about leading up to it and then you actually watch the game and you're like, oh, these are all, guys who probably won't have NFL careers in a year or 2 years, all fighting for their lives. And this is pretty sloppy football because they've only been practicing for like a week and a half. None of the players that I know from any of these teams are playing. So what am I actually doing here? So that's typically, that's typically how these games go. And to be clear, this game also had that. Like, there were a lot of guys who we've never heard before, guys who won't be playing much longer in the NFL, who were on their last legs, who were getting opportunities. But it always is a good showcase, potentially, for some rookies who you have heard of, and maybe some guys in spots where maybe they don't have a future at a particular position, and you wonder if maybe some guys will pop in this game. And that's what happened with Carson Beck. If you remember Carson Beck, he was, of course, the starting quarterback last year for the Miami Hurricanes, who were the national champion runner-ups in the college football playoff last year. He also started 2 seasons with the Georgia Bulldogs. He also was a backup for the Bulldogs when they won 2 national championships. So Carson Beck has been around the block for a while. He was a pretty big recruit coming out of high school as well. So people are very familiar with him. The good, the bad, the indifferent, because he's somebody that's very much in many ways been in the public spotlight for a long time. This is not somebody that was a first round pick or anything like that, but he was drafted 3rd round by the Cardinals, a team that right now doesn't really have a quarterback for the future. You have Jacoby Brissett, who's coming back as the now, I guess you call him incumbent. Like, I know Kyler technically was the starter last year, but he got hurt and lost his job almost immediately. So Jacoby Brissett is back as starting quarterback for Mike LaFleur, the new head coach. They also have a Gardner Minshew. And now you got Carson Beck. This is the quarterback trio you have coming in. The veterans weren't going to play in this game because why would you play veterans in the Hall of Fame game? Which meant Carson Beck was going to get a lot of action. And boy, was he about that action. He had a huge game. Playing in about 3 quarters, he had 188 yards passing. He threw for a touchdown. Could have been 2, by the way. First touchdown that the Cardinals scored was taken away via obviously a review. But threw 1 touchdown, 188 yards. He was 15 for 19. Was crisp in the pocket. Did not in any way, have issues in terms of accuracy, timing. He was on the money. He looked as good as you could look in terms of being a rookie quarterback playing your first game. Again, we know he's playing against 2s and 3s for the Panthers. They're not putting out their starters. But like Chris Collinsworth kept saying in the broadcast, when you've seen this game for so many years, that's game being the Hall of Fame game, and you kind of know the cadence of how this goes, especially with rookies playing, it was surprising to see him look this good. And by the way, Haynes King, who came in relief for Kenny Pickett, maybe the only veteran quarterback that played in this game, he was for the Panthers, of course. I thought Haynes King looked good too. Haynes King, he was 21 for 34. He led them on the game-winning drive. He had 2 touchdowns in this one. So he also looked good playing in this game as well. He finished the game after Kenny Pickett started, probably the first quarter and a half of this game. But if you're Arizona and you're looking towards your future, you don't want to go crazy over a Hall of Fame game. We're not doing that. But I think what I saw from Carson Beck tells me that we'll probably see Carson Beck play this year. And I'm not sure that's something I would have absolutely assumed given just kind of how I view Carson Beck. I think how most of the NFL views Carson Beck. And I'm not a Carson Beck hater. Again, he played for my Canes. He led them to a national championship game. He's a weird guy. People love to, root against him. And I know, he had the Snapchat stuff, the weird Snapchat text to women. He had the weird, the Cavender twin he was dating. There was a whole very public relationship and public blow up when it broke off. And so I don't know what it is about him, but he seems to be somebody that people love to root against. He seems to be kind of an easy punching bag. So he has a lot of quote unquote enemies, to really put that in major quotation marks. But I'm not one of them. He came to Miami. I was a little skeptical, but Miami needed a quarterback, so I was like, let's see what he's got. And for the most part, he delivered. He threw a pick in the last drive. It's football. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna throw picks. But he kept them in the game, and they had a chance to win. So I'm not one of those guys, but just still a 3rd round pick. I'm not sure if that's somebody you assume is definitely going to get an opportunity, especially when you have 2 veterans in front of him. Again, Minshew and Jacoby Brissett. The Cardinals are not in a position where I think you're expecting them to win a lot of games in what is an absolutely vaunted division. First of all, the conference is vaunted, but then the division, you're talking about the defending champion Seattle Seahawks. By the way, I got to watch Hard Knocks last night. I'll probably talk about that a little bit in a second. But Seahawks, defending champs. Rams, in many people's eyes, the Super Bowl favorites this year. The NFC runner-ups in the playoffs last year. 49ers, who have been a staple in the playoffs. They won a playoff game last year in Philadelphia without George Kittle. This is maybe the best conference, best division in the NFL. For a Cardinals team that's tried out Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew, and Jeremiah Love, the star rookie running back, didn't get played in this game, I don't think you're expecting them to win a lot of games. So maybe there was an instinct of like, well, like end of the season, you want to see what you got, you throw them out there maybe. But again, Carson Beck looked good, and one of the things that I noticed, and that stood out to me, is that Carson looked healthy. Like, I think when we talked about his game last year, even when the Miami Hurricanes were winning, or even when they were playing well, he wasn't still 100%. It wasn't really until he talked about it kind of later in the season when he kind of felt fully comfortable in his elbow. And you saw Miami did not have an offense that really was able to hit the deep ball for a large stretches of the season. They just could not connect. I think he hit Tony on one deep ball, I remember, against Florida State. And that was kind of it in terms of like really deep 45, 50 yard kind of air yard kind of passes. He wasn't really throwing the ball down the field like that. You saw him last night, man. He threw a couple of beauties. And that's kind of what made people excited about Carson Beck as an NFL prospect prior to his elbow injury. He was somebody that was being considered as a potential first-round pick, as a potential future number 1 overall pick because of the arm talent. You have an injury, and in some of the bad moments he had in his career, he also got really turnover prone his last year in Georgia. It leads to people wondering, what is this guy really? What's his ceiling? So, again, I think low expectations for him in Arizona, but what you heard from people in camp with how he was performing is what translated to the field. That's why I think this is different. Because you heard about how, man, Carson Beck's been really impressive in Arizona Cards camp. You're like, all right, it's camp. Like, it's, that's good. It's better than him looking like a disaster. But how serious can you take that, considering it's just training camp? Let's see when it's live bullets acting. Well, these are live bullets. It is preseason. They're not showing all their defenses. But it is live bullets, and he was out there slinging the rock and looked really impressive. So I think you look at the Card situation, and they're a team that you certainly would expect to be in the market for a QB next draft class because of how loaded it is. But keep an eye out for Carson Beck, and let's keep an eye out for will he be able to when he gets his opportunity, because I expect that when Minshew and Brissett run out of opportunities and they eventually, fall to 3-10 or whatever it's going to be, that Carson's going to get a chance to play. Hell, maybe there's a chance that it's earlier than that if he continues to play well in the preseason. And is he able to maybe stave off, the Cards from believing they have to invest in a quarterback next year? Can he perform well enough to actually inspire some belief that they do have their answer at quarterback in Carson Beck? It's an interesting development out of Arizona, a team that, besides this, hasn't really been that interesting. Isn't really that interesting. They're moving on from their franchise quarterback. Obviously, Kyler Murray's in Minnesota, and Carson Beck being a third-round pick, lighting up the way he did in his first preseason game, you would expect that he may get another start, because this is like the extra game for a lot of these teams, for the teams that play the Hall of Fame game. So maybe even the week 1 preseason game, maybe he plays in that, and he has another opportunity. Cards will play. I'm trying to see the preseason schedule. They will play. It's not an extra game. They used to do that anymore. They don't do that anymore. So they'll be playing the Raiders next week. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with this. I thought this was a pretty interesting, fascinating development coming out of the preseason NFL Hall of Fame game. Carson Beck's very impressive performance in a loss, but I mean, who cares about the loss? He had nothing to do with that. He didn't finish the game. But Cardinals QB conversation getting a little interesting now, because it's getting harder to hide the success that their third-round pick rookie Carson Beck has been having so far in training camp. Nice to have football back. I mentioned before, I did get to check out Hard Knocks on HBO. Very interesting to watch a team that won the Super Bowl do this again. We haven't seen this in a while. Obviously, Hard Knocks, the HBO, which is, of course, you don't know, the documentary series where they, chronicle the training camp happenings of an NFL franchise. Typically, you end up doing a team based on the rules, because most teams don't want to do this thing. You kind of typically end up doing like some team that was not in the playoffs and trying to rekindle the spark of what they previously had, which I think it brings its own level of interest. But it's a little bit of a tweak to have a Super Bowl champion doing this. Again, this show originated with this being the concept. Like the first team to do Hard Knocks were the 2001 Ravens after they won the Super Bowl. So it's funny that they kind of went back to their roots doing it this way, in part because so many teams don't want to do it that now they have to spin the block on these playoff teams to see if they want to do it. And surprisingly, the Seahawks was like, you know what, why not? We'll do it. Which makes sense to me. It's like, you've won a Super Bowl, so what do you really have to lose? Like, you're already hunted. People are already talking about you. People are already after you. It's probably just good business at that point to do Hard Knocks. You can get a lot of good pub for the community, for the fan base, for the franchise. Like, it's no brainer. To me, it's a no brainer. If you don't believe in the whole this is going to be this massive distraction and we can't win if Hard Knocks is here thing, if you don't buy that, then I don't know why you don't do it. So it was actually fascinating to watch the Seahawks do this. One takeaway I had from the first episode: Mike McDonald is an interesting leader. But by the end of the episode, I think I got him. Listen, we know he's like a wonderkin when it comes to being a defensive coordinator and defensive signal caller. He's the first. Still can't believe this is a fact. First NFL head coach to ever win the Super Bowl as his team's defensive play caller, which seemed impossible because I always thought, what about Bill Belichick? But I guess technically, as much as Bill Belichick was involved in defenses, he always had a defensive coordinator. Or even when he did it, like Brian Flores was still calling the defense. We know Bill Belichick is intimately involved in every play call that comes with the defense, but he wasn't technically defensive play caller. The Seahawks defensive play caller is Mike McDonald. So from that standpoint, we know how talented he was. We saw him turn the Seahawks in basically a year, turn them into the number one defense in the NFL. So, and he was obviously awesome with the Ravens. So we know he's a very good defensive play caller. He's been a young guy in this league for a while. But leadership style, we don't really know much about him. He doesn't at least not the national audience. Like they're up there, and maybe the people in Seattle have kind of gotten a good feel for him now, hearing more press conferences, hearing more post-game comments, maybe interviews he does. Unfortunately, we don't get that out here on the East Coast or much of the country. Seahawks are not like one of the preeminent must-follow franchises in the NFL. So this is actually kind of my first real look at like who Mike McDonald is, and he's awkward. He even says it. Like, I know I'm awkward, guys. Like, he kind of says that at one point during the he says that at one point during the show, which was like a great self-awareness. And I'm like, wow, I'm surprised that this is the guy that was able to like rally this crew, because like any football team, it's a crew. They are a crew of characters. You see that very quickly when you watch the show. But they're led by a guy who's like kind of awkward, kind of nerdy, kind of like he's obviously very smart, but he almost comes across kind of simple, and it somehow it works with that unit though. The way he delivers speeches, the way he delivers messages to the team, they're simple, but they're succinct. They're to the point. They're easy to understand, and I think it's why it's worked for him. It was very fascinating. If you check out Hard Knocks, check it out. I'm usually someone who likes to watch Hard Knocks at least a few episodes every season. I definitely almost always watch the first episode. Very interesting to see them do a team that won a Super Bowl and how they approach it. Because the reality is you have to put a lot of that behind you to go back and try to do something that a lot of teams outside the Chiefs and the Patriots have been unable to do, which is to repeat. So, had a lot of fun last night watching Hard Knocks. Excuse me as I get another cough drop. As you can see, this is real when it comes to this cold I have. Let's keep the ball moving. Let's talk about the MLB trade deadline. So, a lot went down in the MLB trade deadline, but obviously the biggest move was a couple days prior with Skubal landing with the Los Angeles Dodgers. So the dust is settled. This is the biggest move that happened during the trade deadline. Dodgers sending out several prospects, the highest ranked one being their seventh prospect for the former Cy Young winner in Tarek Skubal, putting now the Dodgers well within, I think, the pole position as the favorites that they aren't. Obviously, they were already, but now seriously to win the World Series this year. This is a team that, to be honest, is not playing great baseball. If you've been following them, they're actually on a pretty terrible losing streak. They've lost 6 in a row. So Tarek is probably needed at this point in time, quite frankly, with how they're playing. But I think considering it's August, dog days, probably a team that's kind of tired of dealing with regular season nonsense, ready to get to the postseason. This is a team that's just trying to probably playing out the string. But now you're looking at a rotation that includes Tarek Skubal, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Shohei Ohtani, Sasaki. I mean, this is a loaded team. We already know the offense is loaded. This is obviously a home run landing for the Dodgers. Certainly, you could make the case that they need to get Tarek Skubal. The Dodgers don't ever need any of these guys. But if there's talent to be acquired that would help the team, regardless if it's a need, they're always going to be in the market. And they were aggressive. They got the deal done. And that's that. Obviously, with what comes with any conversation with the Dodgers landing another star is, again, kind of a more macro conversation of what this means for Major League Baseball. Because Tarek Skubal will be a free agent. Other teams, I assume, will be in the market and try to push big offers to the table. But we know the Dodgers have very rarely been kind of outbid when it comes to these free agent pursuits. So is Tarek Skubal going to take less money to play somewhere else? There's no chance that's going to happen. Could someone outbid the Dodgers in theory? Maybe, but we just haven't really seen it happen. So the expectation, I think, for me at least now, is this is not a rental. This is probably Tarek Skubal landing with the Dodgers, and this is going to be a happy ever after story for the Dodgers and for Skubal. I don't think this is happily ever after, obviously, for Major League Baseball. This is probably the worst case scenario for anybody that's afraid of a lockout ensuing next season. Major League Baseball is hell bent on putting a salary cap together, and they've continued to build the case for the Dodgers as the ultimate boogeyman. The team to look at it, they look at what they're able to do, look at how they're able to outspend everybody, and because they're outspending everybody, they've created a competitive imbalance that makes it impossible for smaller market teams to compete with them. How can you compete with the Dodgers when your star players become free agents or have to hit the trade market, and they're the team that consistently is able to afford to bring these guys in? That's the truth of what is going to be said, and that's the truth of what's going to happen. And in many ways, Skubal going there only emboldens that case a little bit. I say a little bit because it's a little it's a little nuanced, because this is not like a free agent signing. I think a free agent signing will come after this, but it's not necessarily a free agent signing. That's why it's a little different. But nonetheless, this is clear as day, kind of what we have going on here. What I will say, though, is there's questions in a couple of fronts. Number one, why was the team able to land a Cy Young winner with only using his seventh best prospect? Like, how does that math that up? Now, Skubal had an elbow injury earlier this year. He had some, I guess, for lack of a better term, minor surgery or minor procedure, I think, to kind of figure it out and help get him ready for the rest of the season. So he was out for a little while. He came back. He's been really good this season. Is there a chance that there's a medical thing that also made teams wary of giving up top prospects to get Tarek Skubal, not knowing if he was going to forget about even signing, being unsure if he was even going to be able to finish the season or pitch deep into the postseason? Maybe. But it still just seems strange. Like, given he's pitched fine. He's been fine. Again, he's a multiple-time Cy Young winner at this point. What is stopping teams from wanting a guy like this who has a .92 whip, a 2.81 ERA? Why wouldn't you want this guy if you're a team that's contending for a championship, why wouldn't you want him at the top of your rotation? Even for a rental, he's that good. Which makes me put on my tinfoil hat. It's not a hat I like to wear. I usually keep it in the corner. I don't really think about it too much. I saw this trade went down. I had to go into my luggage in Mexico. I do travel with it. I may not always have it close to me, but I do travel with it because you never know when you're going to need it. I was on a Mexican beach, and damn it, I put on my tinfoil hat when I saw this trade go down. Because what I wonder is, if you're a team like the Detroit Tigers, a team that is not a big market team, I wouldn't consider you a small market, but you're not big. You're probably medium market team. You're the kind of team that will always lose up. You're losing Tara Skubal because you're not trying to resign him. You have no interest in going to the $300 million range or whatever money he's going to get. Like, that's why you traded him. So, you're the kind of team that's always going to lose a bidding war to the Dodgers. If I really wanted to make a case that baseball needed a salary cap and we couldn't compete, and I needed to get the public sentiment behind me, and while there are fans who blame, like myself, a lot of these broke boy owners who have the money, or maybe don't, whatever the case may be, but refuse to spend to keep up with the Joneses. If I'm trying to build a case to show that no, it's actually the Dodgers' fault, and there's plenty of fans also like myself, because I'm kind of in both camps, who can't stand the Dodgers, who feel like this is corny, like this has become unfun, watching them just collect stars every single time there's a star available. Wouldn't it behoove me to ensure that narrative continues by maybe giving him to the Dodgers and then watching him likely get signed to some crazy contract? To me, that helps your case. To me, that makes it more palatable for, well, not palatable, but it gives you another thing to point to say this is another example of where we can't control the fact that the Dodgers get the best players. And it's that way on a couple of fronts. Because if you think about it from trade standpoint, because a lot of people will say, well, it's a trade, so how does this apply? I'll tell you how it applies. If you're the Rays, or you're the Brewers, or you're one of these top, smaller market teams, hell, even some of these big market teams, if you know you're not going to be able to outbid the Dodgers, how willing are you to unload your best prospects to get someone like that, Tara Skubal? And the reality is, while the Dodgers have a very good farm system as well, the reality is a lot of these small market teams, the lifeblood of those teams are the farm systems. So they got some real dudes down there. Like, they got some real ball players. Like, they're not trying to just give up their number 2 or number 1 prospect. That guy might turn into like the next Manny Ramirez or something like that. Like, you know what I'm saying? So if you know you can't resign him, and you know, like, your sustained ability to compete is through prospects. Are you? I mean, now you can answer that you should anyway. But I ask you, are you really gonna fork over your top prospect for Tara Skubal? Again, I would argue when you have a chance to win a World Series, yes. But I don't think that these teams are operating from that lens. I don't think these teams are operating from that disposition. I think it's a lot bigger than that because they're trying to change the landscape of the sport, right? And introducing a salary cap. So, damn, one World Series. Why am I going to, give up the farm when I'm going to get my... When in theory, they feel like they're going to get the salary cap anyway. So, from that standpoint, I've looked at it and I'm like, that seems fishy. That seems weird. But if you feel like we're not going to be able to sign this guy, and if we give these top prospects and we don't win the championship, like, now we're kind of behind the 8 ball. All right, I see your point. The other aspect of this too that I think is interesting that nobody talks about when people are trying to figure out where the connection is to the CBA issues and painting the Dodgers as the boogeyman when it comes to a trade, It is the same thing as on the flip side for the Dodgers. If you're the Dodgers and you know that you're going to be able to resign, you're going to be able to sign them, and you know that other teams are wary of your ability to sign away their best players, why would I give you my best offer? Why would I offer you my top 2, 3 prospects if I know those other teams are wary of what the price is going to be when it comes to a trade? Like, it doesn't make sense. I'm going to have the guy in 6 months, or with the lockout, maybe 18 months, or whatever the case may be. But you know what I mean? Either way, he's going to be here soon anyway. So what am I in some rush for? I might as well just wait. I might as well just give him my offer, let it stand, see if anybody's going to bite, and let me go. And why this is so frustrating, and why the Dodgers are willing to do this, and why it correlates, is because the original Shohei Ohtani deal continues to make an impact in all these moves. If Shohei Ohtani was not allowed to take all that deferred money, what I think ends up happening is you don't have the Dodgers feeling so bold to aggressively go after all these free agents and guys on the trade market, knowing that they can re-sign them. Maybe the Dodgers make this move anyway if they didn't have any interest in re-signing Taras Skubal. But I think the odds are pretty unlikely. I think they got him for a price that they wanted. They got him for a price that they liked, a price that they feel comfortable with. So that tells me that it doesn't make sense for them not to then just try to re-sign him. Like, then you could really make out like bandits. But all of this stems from that stupid first contract that was allowed with Ohtani, where they can pay him $1 million per year while he's being, withheld $700 million that's going to come to him in 15, 20 years. Like, it's ridiculous. And that's what sucks about it. That's the aspect of it that feels like collusion to me. Like, it feels like the team is able to do this. Other teams know that they're able to do this, so they're like, you know what? The Dodgers aren't playing by everybody else's rules because we don't have the funds to promise a star player $700 million down the line. So we're not going to go crazy or try to get Taras Skubal, who, as great as he is, I don't know if adding him to the Rays means you're going to win a championship, or adding him to the Brewers means you're going to get past the Dodgers and get to the World Series. There's no way to know that. So I think that those teams are taking that risk, but also understanding that it looks good for their case against the Dodgers for why they're bad for baseball and why they need a salary cap. It sucks. All of it sucks. None of this is good for the fans. Whether you think that the Dodgers are at fault, or whether you think these broke boy owners or small market teams are at fault, all of it's bad. I'll be honest, it's baseball. I like baseball. I like the Major Baseball playoffs. I'll be watching. But I saw this trade happen. It just kind of sucked the life a little bit out of me when it came to wanting to really be locked into what this postseason is going to look like. Braves have had an incredible season. I watched them in person lose to the Mets last week. Surprising. Braves had an incredible season. They've been on an 8-game winning streak since that loss. Brewers again have had an awesome season. Cubs have beat the Dodgers just during this road trip the Dodgers were on. So it's not like the National League is good. The National League is much better than the American League. So the Dodgers will be tested, but for interest in the sport, it's not interesting for them to join the Dodgers. It just isn't. But that's what we got. So we'll end up seeing how that ends up shaking out, man. But you got Taras Skubal joining the LA Dodgers. We did have another interesting trade deadline storyline that involved a team that actually didn't make a lot of moves, but it did make a lot of moves. It did make some moves, but not the big ones. It was the Yankees. They added Elliot Ramirez and Luis Garcia Jr. at the trade deadline, and that was it. They didn't get a catcher, didn't get another starting pitcher, didn't get a reliever, didn't get somebody to play the left side of the infield, nothing. They got Garcia, who we're being told is going to play first DH in a 3-man platoon situation with Ben Rice and Paul Goldschmidt. And I guess eventually Giancarlo Stanton will be there, and we'll figure where he fits in. And Elliot Ramirez, who will once again be kind of another outfield option for them as they battle injuries. Both Judge and Bellinger right now out. Yankees have not been playing great baseball. They did get a boost, though, from the minor league system with George Lombard, their top prospect, shortstop, coming up, hit a home run in his debut. Has looked really good in these first few games, just in the field, at the plate. Already people are kind of looking at him saying, man, like, this is somebody that maybe could have helped out a little earlier. But, yeah, you mind if we don't want to throw a kid up into the fire almost immediately. I think the fact that he got that time down in the minor leagues probably helped him. It's been 2 games, but early on, the what you got back and the returns have been very good when you see from George Lombard. But just on the Yankee front, first on the trade deadline aspect of this, I obviously it was a miss. It's nothing against Ramos or Garcia. Garcia is a good bat. Ramos is a pretty good bat. Ramos is a good defender. I don't think Garcia is really a defender per se, but they're here for offense. That's fine. But I just have a problem for a team to enter a trade deadline with very clear holes that they have to fill or issues to address, and they address another one. Their left side of their infield, they addressed with promoting George Lombard, which is fine, but they did not address third base at all, which is the worst position in all of Major League Baseball, according to WAR, wins over replacement, in the American League. Worst third base WAR throughout all of the American League. Catcher, worst catcher WAR throughout all the American League, maybe all Major League Baseball. Bullpen's very good. I know that's been kind of a sticking point with some Yankee fans arguing whether or not they need to spend on the bullpen. My problem with the bullpen is, as good as it is, I think it lacks depth, and I think it lacks intimidation factor. I think when you think about bullpens in postseason, you want there to be a fear that when you get to the end of those games, that you almost don't got a shot. I know what the numbers have said, and I know how the Yankees perform. Some of these guys have performed individually. I don't think any team is entering games in the ninth inning against Bednar feeling like they can't win. I know, and even though he's had a good year, and forget about Bednar, a lot of those other guys that lower in the totem pole when it comes to the Yankee bullpen, I don't think that you're looking at a bullpen that people are going to come in and say, "Oh, we're cooked trying to go against these guys." A team's really scared of Fernando Cruz. Hendricks had a really good year. Tim Hill has not had a good year. Blackburn has a good year, but I mean, these are the guys. We're talking about Blackburn and Hedrick. Like, these are the guys we're talking about. Like, our team's gonna really, are those guys really gonna be the guys that are gonna be closing games or setting up Bednar in huge games against top teams, maybe in the World Series? I think you needed to get another arm in there that you feel confident about, that can maybe again inspire some intimidation for some teams and give you some insurance in case one of you guys turns into a tomato. Yankees weren't able to do any of that. So to me, I look at that again and say, man, that's a massive failure, a massive flop for the Yankees at this trade deadline. Again, the good news is, I think you look at George Lombard and you say, okay, maybe shortstop we now have figured out. Maybe this rookie comes in and he's better than serviceable. Maybe he's even good, and that's now a dynamic that would have been right. But not addressing those other positions, especially catcher. Brian Cashman, he spoke on WFAN. He's also, I think, on other public comments, mentioning essentially that, Liam Hicks, they didn't want to go for him because, they already had Austin Wells, who's a lefty hitting catcher, and they didn't want another lefty hitting catcher. I'm like, your lefty hitting catcher sucks. Like, I mean, I don't want to be mean to Austin Wells. I don't want to be one of the guy to kick somebody down, but he's had a terrible, terrible season. He's batting 169. Could you tell me that he's swinging the bat a little better now? I mean, yeah, he's right, these last 4 games in 333. I guess you could say he's swinging the bat a little better now, but I have no reason to believe this is going to be something that's going to absolutely change and that he's going to all of a sudden turn it around by the time the postseason's come around. There's going to be a situation where you're going to have Austin Wells in a huge spot in the postseason, and he's going to be in at bat to make or break maybe a series, a pivotal game, maybe even the season in a game 7 or elimination type situation, like you're gonna feel comfortable with him having to have big at bats in those situations. It seemed like again like another other failure, and some of it came down to philosophy. It came down to again not wanting a left-handed catcher. When it came to the additions of Garcia and Ramos, the idea was, well, now we have the ultimate ability to platoon multiple positions. I'm tired of the Yankee dynamic being we can solve anything with a platoon. That is like the motto of this team. I mean, we've seen it with Joey Gallo. We've seen it with now Ryan McMahon. We saw it with DJ LeMahieu. Like, I'm tired of the team thinking every problem can be solved with a platoon. And it's not to say that platooning is bad or that platooning means that you can't find success offensively. But, and there's been plenty of times where I've seen the Yankees use platoons effectively to win championships. But it's different to me when you're talking about multiple positions, and again, that always being your ace in the hole to solve your problems. I think with platooning, you can look at the numbers and say, well, this guy always hits well against lefties, and this guy always hits well against righties. Well, then we'll be great, because that means anytime we play that line, that spot in the lineup, so it's gonna be someone that's gonna be productive. It's not always that simple. Especially you have guys who aren't used to platooning. Like Garcia hasn't platooned all year. He's been playing every day. Like, I know Goldschmidt has become more accustomed to platooning, but he's also playing a lot more recently because of the injuries. I think there's a reality that if you're not playing every day and you're only seeing certain matchups at certain times, that you don't get the right rhythm. You're not getting the right amount of at-bats. And maybe the value that you have, that you think you see just based on the pure ability to hit against lefties or righties, becomes a little bit more muted because that player is not in the right rhythm to actually produce. I really think that it's a flawed way to view baseball. But that's kind of how the Yankees continue to view this. That they can, again, Judd's going to play every day. Rice going to play every day. And Bellinger's going to play every day. And I guess, because they didn't do anything at second base now, Jazz. And it's like everywhere else, we can figure this out. We'll play this guy against righties, this guy against lefties. And it's like you can't do that everywhere on the diamond. Like, you got to have guys you feel comfortable trotting out in the lineup every day. Guys who know where they're going to be in the lineup. They're not being yo-yoed up and down. They're not being yo-yoed in and out of the lineup. There's a rhythm. I keep saying the word rhythm. There's also a routine that you're able to follow and routine you're able to get comfortable with that you would never get with how the Yankees want to build their teams. So I didn't love this trade deadline. I don't hate the individual players they got, but you got a first baseman when you don't need a first baseman, and you got an outfielder when you don't really need an outfielder. So what was the point of this? I didn't really get it. Let's keep moving. Let's go back to football for a second. Aaron Rodgers decided to go off during his interview with Pat McAfee, his first interview of this season. I didn't watch the full interview, so I don't know if he made any reference to like this was going to be a weekly thing again. Last year he did the one interview at the top in training camp, and then we didn't see him again. And he didn't make really any headlines, which was like, it kind of just went by the wayside. I don't think anybody really talked much about it, but it was kind of a thing for a guy who made this weekly spot on McAfee. His ability to unleash his like stream of consciousness onto Americans, it just went away. And I think you kind of credit Mike Tomlin, who clearly when he got there said, "Hey, listen, I want you, I love you, I think you're gonna be great for us, but this obviously probably said there's one thing I need from you. I can't have you doing this McAfee thing anymore." And he didn't do it. And the Steelers had a pretty good year. Like, they did what they always do. They went 10-7 and they lost in the first round of the playoffs. And to be honest, that's kind of what they signed up for when they got Rodgers. So you think, okay, well, that's maybe Rodgers turning over a new leaf, or at the very least, just him understanding that for the team concept, maybe it's best that he doesn't create distractions by going out and going off on Fauci and all this nonsense. But as we saw, now there's a new sheriff in town with Mike McCarthy now running the show as a head coach, which means I think there's a new sheriff in town that Aaron Rodgers is actually the new sheriff because he gets his first crack at a Pat McAfee interview and he goes off. Let's hear some of the sound from Aaron Rodgers. A lot of it sounding like a very bitter man, a very angry man. Here he was taking aim at Anthony Fauci, who I think everybody knows who he is, but if you don't know who he is, if you really are just a sports head, he was the guy when COVID happened that essentially was in charge of leading the COVID response. When it came to safety measures, when it came to development of the vaccine, like he was the guy that was like the Trump administration's like point person for this. He's become a political football. He's come under a lot of fire. And Aaron Rodgers, somebody who obviously is very against very against vaccines and very against how the U.S. responded to COVID, still not letting go Anthony Fauci after his, I guess, disposition. I don't know what you call it. It was a hearing in the Senate where he was asked to talk about his response to the COVID response, and he pled the fifth throughout the entire time. Here's Rodgers, still mad at Fauci.
I was endangering my teammates and this and that. Now look what happened. We talked about they suppressed early treatments. They lied about where it came from. Tony Fauci's writing in his journal about, I don't want to, create any vaccine hesitancy if I tell them what the actual stats are. How many papers have been written? How many McCulloughs and Malones and all the great doctors out there who actually did treatment on the front end and repurposed drugs that are the safest profiles in the world. But no, Tony Fauci pushing his medicine just like he did back in the 80s. And now, when you have an auto pen pardon,
hey Jay, you know what happened.
You have an auto pen pardon, 2 minutes, but and you can't answer one question.
Hey, now real quick,
not even your name. Come on, what are we doing?
Can we do this real
and
quick?
How much time did the network spend on that?
Hey.
Okay, a lot there. I'm to keep it a buck with you. I cannot confirm if any of those things Aaron Rodgers said was true. I know he didn't. I know Anthony Fauci did not. He pled the fifth for every question during this hearing. All this stuff about him having a journal. I know he did have a journal, but him saying he didn't want to say bad things about the vaccine or things I can't confirm that because Aaron Rodgers says a lot of things that end up not being true. So I don't want to I'm playing these sound bites only to kind of let me talk about it, but I'm not going to sit here and fact check Aaron Rodgers. That is something that I think you can do, and you can have your own feeling on that. But just the facts of what he's saying really isn't the point of why I'm bringing this up and why I'm talking about him. But to get more context, here's him once again, that last point about, did anybody cover any of that? He continues to be concerned about ESPN's coverage, particularly of him, and how it apparently did not apply to Anthony Fauci.
And how much time did the network spend on that? How much time did they spend on my responses every week, on my vaccination status, on Taylor and Travis's wedding?
Yeah!
Did they do even a minute? Did they do even a minute on Tony Fauci?
No, I don't think I've heard anything.
I bet they didn't.
ESPN's a sports network. Why would ESPN cover Anthony Fauci like they're CNN, like they're Fox News, like they're MSNBC? We talked about COVID and talked about COVID-19 from a sports lens because it was impacting sports. We couldn't have sports. And the government and medical experts were telling us that in order to have sports, we had to go by these certain bylines. So that's why we covered COVID at the time. But why would we cover the fallout of Anthony Fauci and his tenure at the CDC? Why the hell would ESPN cover that? Why? That doesn't make any sense. They're going to say, oh, I know you want to hear about where LeBron's going to Philly, but first, let's get Kendrick Perkins and talk about Anthony Fauci's Senate hearing. Are you serious, bro? Does that make any sense? Hey guys, I know we want to talk about the Seahawks that won the Super Bowl, but before we get to that, we got to get a live shot of Rand Paul, and we got to ask him some questions about what he's going to talk about Anthony Fauci. Come on, man! This stuff is stupid. This is stupid stuff. Like, but it's coming from a sad, bitter man who only has straw man arguments to make him feel good about how his career and his life ended up, which were all his decisions. But I'll continue that in a second. He didn't stop at Fauci. He went deeper into how ESPN is a organization that is failing and not doing a good job, particularly because of its lack of coverage of Mike Vrabel and Diane Rossini's scandal over the offseason.
Then there was another scandal this offseason, too, involving a voter for MVP, for Coach of the Year. How much time did your network spend? Where's your Kim? Did your network spend on that?
Our network?
I wish
How much time did you
Go
spend?
back to Fauci. This is awesome.
Go back to Fauci?
Yeah.
Go back to the coward Tony Fauci and his science?
So he raises the question, like, by the way, like, you guys also didn't cover Diane Rossini and Mike Vrabel. And, you know, somebody on that team, shout out to Pat McAfee show, probably realized that maybe that was now crossing a line for, like, ESPN. Him ranting about Fauci is, like, so stupid. I think even they realize, like, this doesn't really hurt anybody. It will hurt the people who dislike ESPN for platforming this, but they've learned by now not to care about those people anymore. So they weren't worried about that. But when you start talking about, like, oh, ESPN's coverage of sports, because, you know, Mike Vrabel and Rossini are sports figures, and that may be a line we don't want to cross. Let's have fun just bashing, like, this old 85-year-old doctor. So he went on to do more of that, but he went back to the Vrabel Rossini coverage and why it bothers him.
What's the network doing? Like, you have literally an individual that maybe used to work at ESPN that covers our league at the highest level, and there's a major scandal, and it's just like nobody can fucking talk about it? What are we even doing
personal
here?
lives are personal lives. I feel like you of all people should know that. But
I understand, but if it's affecting certain things, if there's leaks going on, if there's tampering going on, if that person is also an MVP voter and a Coach of the Year voter.
So, again, Rodgers clearly has a major beef with ESPN and the coverage of him. What I'll say on the Rossini thing, like, I don't necessarily disagree with that aspect of it. Like, should ESPN have covered it? I mean, maybe. Like, I think that was something that became very complicated for folks. Maybe it shouldn't have been. Like, maybe the reality is, like, you know, I covered it on this show. I kind of questioned whether I should, but I talked about it, and I said, you know what, let's just talk about it, because my view on doing this sports commentary thing is you got to be where the people are. And if the people are on a story, to ignore it because you feel bad for somebody, or you think it's too personal. And there's some aspects where there's some instances where they are. But if they're public figures and people are talking about it, and that's where your fans are, that's where your listeners are, that's where your viewers are, then that's where you should be. So you can certainly make a case that ESPN probably should have covered that. And Rodgers didn't articulate it well because he doesn't articulate anything well. But I think he tried to make the leap to, like, he mentioned the former colleague, which may be why ESPN didn't want to cover it, because, you know, Diane at one point was working for ESPN and in theory was also breaking news for ESPN. And if they cover Diane Rossini's apparent misconduct, then it would then look bad upon them. Like, they would say, okay, well, you were benefiting from it for some time. Maybe, like, this particular time she was working for The Athletic, and maybe you could spin it to, like, oh, like, she doesn't work with us anymore. But, like, that's not a hard leap to make, and a hard leap to understand why a network maybe wouldn't want to cover it. Again, Rodgers, because he's not able to articulate anything smart, is unable to articulate that. But I think that's the leap he's trying to get to. And he's in a pretty big environment, lights, cameras, action, fans yelling, those guys yelling, the other cast of the McAfee show. They're all yelling in his ear and stuff. So I think there's a reality that there's some truth to that maybe they should cover that. But I think what's silly about all of this is it all stems from a self-serving position. Do you think Aaron Rodgers really gives a F about the sanctity of a Coach of the Year vote? Or an F about even the sanctity of an MVP vote? Like, he ain't winning no damn MVP, so who gives a crap what he has to say about that? That's not what his problem is. His problem is he feels like he was wronged, he was slandered, and he was in some ways like just defiled, and he has no recourse to get any of that back. I was on a podcast, shout out to Jason Buford. Podcast should be out sometime today, Jason Buford show. And I mentioned earlier that to me, like the problem with Aaron Rodgers is he has a non like relenting victim complex. He is somebody who not only runs to make himself a victim, but I think almost relishes in like victimhood. For somebody that has probably made $200 to $300 million in contracts in the NFL, who's won multiple MVPs, who has won Super Bowl, who's famous, who I'm sure lives a pretty great, lavish life, it's not enough for him. Because he is somebody that always has been told by somebody, it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but enough people, that he wasn't good enough. He was told that when he was in high school. Nobody wanted to give him no scholarship offers. He was told that when he was in JUCO. He was told that in college. He had the embarrassment. We kind of forget his origin story in the NFL is like embarrassment. Like he sat there thinking he was going to be a top 3 or 4 pick in the NFL draft. And he sat in the green room for hours waiting for a team to call him. This was back in the day when the NFL first round was forever. And it took like 3 hours like to get through the first round. It's not like now where they get through it kind of quickly. He was in there for a long time. And he's somebody that part of the reason why he's great is probably because he's been able to harness that resentment and harness that disrespect and the doubters and that underdog mentality to make himself into the great player he is. But what has also manifested in that process is this person who's extremely insecure. So I remember the 60 Minutes thing when he had the 60 Minutes interview, and like they were kind of just joking about how he kind of wasn't that tall and how like obviously myth he was at that. And these small little things that they kind of were poking at him in terms of like just doubters and things that were used against him and how it still bothers him. And then, of course, what we saw was how he created a life where he became Mr. America. He's Mr. Discount Double Check. He's probably one of the biggest endorsement deal guys in the NFL at the time. He's one of the faces of the league. He probably has like 100% approval rating. Like, who doesn't like the Packers outside of Bears fans and Vikings fans and Lions fans? If you're outside of those division rivalries, who doesn't typically like the Packers, like Green Bay, like the, Lambeau Field, and at that time, who didn't like Aaron Rodgers? He didn't do anything to be unlikable. He was really talented, really good, and really didn't step himself in any kind of controversies at all off the field. He seemed to be a pretty good guy, seemed to live a fun life. He's dating the models, dating the Danica Patricks, dating the Olivia Munns. So there really was nothing to dislike. He's setting up to be the host of Jeopardy. Everything looked great. And it all came crashing down because he went up on that podium. And when they asked him if he was vaccinated, he said, "I'm immunized." And everything that was coming to him and everything that he had built came crashing down like a house of cards because of how hyper-politicized the conversation around COVID became and around vaccines became. And I want to make a very important point about this because it's the thing that people keep losing sight of. He lied. He was exposed as being a liar. He was exposed as somebody who was a fraud and a phony. He was exposed as somebody who, when it came down to when he was asked about his position, he could have stood 10 toes down. And instead, He chose the coward's way out, which is really kind of what Aaron Rodgers has been for the latter part of the last 6 years. He's been cowardly. Everything that he has done when it comes to using his public platform has been to attack, demean, and try to destroy anybody that was against him out of revenge because he didn't like that his lie and his position were unpopular. I'm sorry, Aaron Rodgers, that people don't like that you're a liar. I'm sorry, Aaron Rodgers, that people don't like that you don't believe in vaccines or you have some, whatever your belief is about them. I'm sorry about that. But that's also America and that's also the truth. And if you want to live in a fantasy world where that shouldn't matter and it's somehow ESPN's fault or it's Anthony Fauci's fault or it's some media personality's fault for why you lost out on what your career was supposed to be, that's a you problem, buddy. That's something you got to go to a therapist to. That's something you got to go talk to your wife to, who we don't know who the hell she is, because you're so scared of, for someone who's so brave, you're so scared of even confirming that your wife even exists. Like, I'm tired of this guy pushing himself like he's this big macho man when he started as a coward. That's how this whole thing began with him. It started with the most cowardly act you can do. Lie about something because you were afraid about how you were going to be perceived. And because of the politicized nature of COVID and vaccines, and because of how, like, I'm not getting into no views and no debates about efficacy of vaccines or anything like that. It's not the show for that. But because of just the politicized view of it, is becoming more open season, open. It's a lot of people are being allowed to kind of tell the history of COVID on their own terms now. That's becoming more in vogue. What the truth is, it kind of ends up kind of being what you believe, which is sad. There used to be a time where you could just believe the truth or believe facts, but that's just not where we are now. So it's like when they say the winners of the war can tell the stories. Like, I don't know if anybody really won the war on COVID, but actually because of that, now everybody can tell a story. So Aaron Rodgers is part of a contingency of Americans who tell this story that somehow they were right the whole time. That vaccines never worked. That they really were dangerous. And that COVID wasn't that big a deal. That's what they believe. I'm not really here to argue with it. All I will say is that it's real that millions of people died from it. I know people who lost people from COVID. It's real that people who had it, some are still dealing with the ramifications of it. That's also real. It's also real that we had vaccines, whatever you think about them, and cases went down and less people died. How important it was it the only reason? Like, I'm not here to debate you on that stuff. If you have a reason why that was and you want to explain it away, okay, fine. But my point, though, is that, like, the fact that, like, even those facts can be kind of, like, argued kind of goes to the point of this whole thing. So Aaron Rodgers, now that he feels he can tell the war differently, or at least in his mind, he feels like he's somehow vindicated. So he's coming to get his licks back on COVID. And this is in many ways, he's a microcosm of, like, America. That's what's so funny about this, is, like, for somebody who likes to paint himself as such an interesting person and so alternative and so, like, unique, he's so ununique and he's so, like, inauthentic and he's so, like, just like everybody else. Like, yeah, I'm in echo chamber that has led me down a rabbit hole about all the things that are terrible about Anthony Fauci. Wow, you're not like 50% of the country. Like, you're not that interesting or that special. Nothing about this makes you special. In fact, there were people who never lied about their COVID status, their vaccine status. Never lied about what they thought about vaccines and COVID and all that stuff. And they haven't milked this thing the way you have. Kyrie Irving isn't running around coming after Anthony Fauci, making everything about Anthony Fauci and vaccines and Eric Adams in New York who didn't allow him to play. You don't have – there are players in the NFL. I think Joe Flacco didn't want to take the vaccine. I remember Josh Allen was very apprehensive. There are guys who played during the NFL season or didn't play or missed games or had issues, guys who didn't want to be vaccinated. That, like, they're still in the NFL. And this guy is the only guy that is on this, like, do or die vendetta after the media and Anthony Fauci because of what he lost. Because the reality is Aaron Rodgers isn't this alternative guy. Aaron Rodgers isn't this super interesting, weird guy. He's not. He had to become that. He had to become that because he lost the celebrity status. He lost being the Jeopardy guy. He lost being the everyman that all Americans can root for. He lost a Mr. I can date all the models and all the actresses and all the celebrities because I can be in those circles. Like, he lost all that. Those folks rejected him because a lot of America rejects him. He's an unlikable figure. He's not a likable guy. So he'd either have to go like the Jake Paul, Logan Paul route where, like, you can still be famous, but you're almost now infamous. You almost can become more sideshow. But he doesn't want to do that. Because he doesn't deserve that. He's not Jake Paul. He's not Logan Paul. Like, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He doesn't want to be a sideshow. So he has to go to something else. He's like, okay, well, I can't do that. So I'm forced into this. I'm in this forced exile into being this weirdo. So, and by the way, I'm not saying that he doesn't actually believe any of this stuff. I don't really know or care what he believes. I don't necessarily think that he doesn't believe it. Let me be clear. But again, you can believe stuff, but not let that be your entire personality. There's a lot of things I believe. There's a lot of things I view. There's a lot of things that I have as principles, and I don't make that the lead for my public persona because it doesn't serve. Maybe it doesn't serve me. Maybe it's not my entire personality, right? Like, it's like, you know, with Rodgers though, this is his entire personality now. It's only conspiracies. It's only vendettas. It's only going after people. It's only how he's been slighted. These are the only things he has now in his career. This is it, because he doesn't have football anymore either. That's the other thing. Not only does he not have that all-American approval, he also doesn't have the talent to back up being worth talking about when it comes to football. He's an average quarterback. He was average last year. He was average with the Jets. He was average this last year with the Packers. This is now 6 years of him being average. 1 year he was hurt. So he's been an average quarterback who's either been injured or mostly ineffective. What is there to talk about with him in football? Oh, I'm excited to throw the ball to DK Metcalf and this new offense. Who gives a crap about that? You're playing for the Steelers, one of the most prestigious franchises in the NFL, one of the most talked about franchises in the NFL, and nobody gives a damn about anything you're doing with football because we know you have no chance in hell to win anything of significance. That's the truth. And because that's his truth, he can't make headlines or he can't make news talking about football, talking about his team, talking about how excited he is to play with Coach Mike McCarthy. He can't. None of that matters to anybody because nobody gives a crap. This stuff does, and it matters to him because he realizes that a lot of what he thought was coming to him was lost. He doesn't want to be a nomad. He doesn't want to be, I'm living in the woods by myself and I'm smoking whatever in the woods. He doesn't want to be that guy. He wants to be Mr. Hollywood. And he can't be that guy anymore because so many people. And the reality is, he probably could get some of that back. We're a very forgiving country, especially right now. It seems like nobody's really canceled forever anymore. So, like, he probably could get some of that stuff back, but I think his pettiness is not allowing him to even see that. He's like, well, you can't fire me, I fire you. You didn't dump me, I dumped you. So he's moving around as if like, oh, this is how I've always been. This is how I've always wanted my life to be. When we know damn well that's not what he wanted. And everything we're seeing from him now is is now just the ramifications of us having to deal with the fallout, man. It's sad. It's annoying. But I think it's one of those things that we're just going to have to realize that we have one more year with him. We'll see if this is going to spin off into a new career. He says he's going to go away forever. You never see him again. I hope so. I'll be real. I hope so. Like I don't like. I'm talking about it because it's ridiculous and because it was newsworthy. But I don't really. Again, if Aaron Rodgers had not talked about this, outside of generic NFL football previews, I wouldn't be talking about the Steelers leading up into this NFL season. There's nothing to talk about. They're a good team. Could they win the AFC Central? Maybe. I mean, it's Central. Wow, what am I? AFC Central. What am I? Living in 1998. Excuse me. Could they win the AFC North? In theory, maybe. Like, you know, they're in a division that's kind of a dog-eat-dog division. No one really stands out per se. Last year, felt they kind of won it by default. I would not pick them to win it again. But, you know, the reality, though, is that they're not one of the teams that are the championship contenders. And the fact that he was so hell-bent on retiring showed that I don't think he really thought there was much there for him in the NFL and there for him to, like, come back to. But I think he figured also the reality is if he leaves the NFL, all he's got is whatever this weirdo lifestyle he's going to live moving forward. I don't think he actually wants to do that. So that's the truth. I do want to talk about this thing going on with Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant. So this is very interesting. So Kevin Durant, if you'll remember, apparently had his burner account messages and tweets leaked during the All-Star game, or right before the All-Star game, where all these comments where he was disparaging current teammates, former teammates, whether it was in DMs to what I assume were just other NBA fans, it seemed like, or, you know, posts that he posted under another alias, all slamming guys on the Rockets, guys on the Suns. I don't think he had too many Warriors things, if I remember, but no, it wasn't Warrior things. Slamming Steve Kerr, like all these different kind of things. And Kevin Durant never really addressed it. He was asked about it after, and he said something along the lines of, like, that's Twitter nonsense. I'm not going to get into. I just want to focus on basketball. It's like, you don't want to talk about Twitter nonsense? Really? Mr. I live on X? Okay, whatever. So he kind of went away. And we really didn't see him anymore on X. He kind of, like, his public platform on X, he'll post like I'm doing a, what's it called? Like I'm doing like some kind of like spawn, like, oh, here's a sponsored thing for shaving cream, something like that. Like, he's not doing anything with any commentary. He's just posting whatever sponsor post he has to do for his endorsement deals. So I thought we were kind of done with Kevin Durant with social media, at least for a little bit. But with him, you know, you're never done forever. Because now it appears he has resurfaced on Threads and Instagram, where under his real name, he's once again arguing with NBA fans about the NBA. It is so bizarre to me that he is somebody who, like, is why he loves talking to, like, it's weird because on the one hand, there is something kind of noble about an NBA superstar wanting to, like, engage with the NBA fans about talking about the game the way NBA fans do. It is weird how, like, invested he is in it. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's one thing to, like, oh, you tap in, oh, you comment every now and then, you have some fun, and you move on. Like, there were times where it seemed like he was in days just on social media, particularly on X, just tweeting away at randoms all day, arguing about the NBA, arguing about how basketball's played, arguing about teams, all different kind of things. And it's one thing, again, to dabble, to visit. When you play in the NBA, like, I don't know, if I played in the NBA, I'd be more interested in playing in the NBA than talking about the NBA. But he seems equally as interested in both. So that all happened. He's in the leave, but now again he's resurfaced on Instagram. Once again, he's commenting on the NBA. And I guess what has happened is a lot of people are talking about LeBron's move to the Sixers. The Sixers team that has a lot of talent, obviously. You got Joel Embiid, you got Tyrese Maxey, they add Jaylen Brown, they got VJ Esco. Very formidable starting lineup. Multiple All-Stars. I guess along the lines, Kevin Durant's been somebody who's been trying to defend LeBron's move. Because there's some who have argued that, LeBron's ring chasing and this is beneath him and all those different things. He is somebody who has jumped in to defend LeBron. But I don't think he's really here to defend LeBron. I think he's really here to defend himself still. Because eventually he lends himself into a comparison between the 27 Sixers and the 17 Warriors. Here's Kevin Durant on social media talking about how he thinks the Sixers, in some ways, have more talent than the 2017 Golden State Warriors that he joined. A team that the previous year won 73 games. He says, quote, "Ain't close, LMAO. Joel MVP recently. Jaylen Brown recent Finals MVP. Tyrese Maxey All-Star the last 3 years. We all know what Bron has done. Klay Thompson never an MVP candidate in nothing. 22 points per game. Draymond Green, 14 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Steph MVP just like Joel was. I don't get how the Warriors team is better on paper." So we can argue just that aspect of it, but before we get to that, some people weren't happy with this, and not just fans. Klay Thompson was unhappy with this apparently, because he posted on social media. It's hard to tell how sarcastic he was, but this is what he posted. He said, "Hey, man, are you good? Easy money sniper. What are you using my full government for?" And he posted like a government card emoji. It's funny with these things. I didn't even know there was a government card emoji until I saw this post from Klay Thompson. So that was, I think, in part Klay Thompson referring to the part when Kevin Durant mentioned how Klay Thompson never was an MVP in anything and only averaged 22 points a game. So I think to talk about this from just a Kevin Durant standpoint, I saw this and I said, listen, I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to talk about how I think ridiculous this is, but I think it's first to say, I'm once again back to the disposition of I don't think it makes sense to argue with Kevin Durant or fight Kevin Durant or clown Kevin Durant anymore. Like, I think, I really believe this is somebody who I actually have concerns about, like, how they're doing and their mental health. Like, I really hope Kevin Durant is the kind of person who finds a way to find peace with his NBA career. He can say that he has and say that he does, but I don't think somebody that engages with randos to continue to justify a movie he made 10 years ago to leave the Thunder to go to 73-win Warriors is somebody that is at peace. Just doesn't seem like that to me. So that's the first thing on Kevin Durant. On the actual point he's trying to make, first of all, it's ridiculous to compare this Sixers team to that Warriors team on paper when he tried to make the case that Joel Embiid was a recent MVP. I mean, I don't know. Like Joel Embiid, the version he is right now compared to what he was when he was an MVP is night and day. To try to make a case that Joel Embiid in his current health, his current skill set, his current athleticism is similar to 2017 Steph Curry, who just came off back-to-back MVPs, is insane. Completely insane. It speaks to something that, like, again, it sounds like somebody who's not in their right mind talking about basketball if you're trying to make that comparison. So he made that comparison. And then on the other stuff, I mean, Jaylen Brown's a very good player. Tyrese Maxey's a very good player. And obviously, of course, Edgecombe is good and stuff. But, like, these guys are all all-stars. But then to basically put those guys up against his former teammates, Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, and only basically refer to them by their stats and not their accomplishments, again, speaks to somebody that, like, is just warped when it comes to reality. At the end of the day, these are guys that help you win a championship. Two, actually. Like, you left your previous stop because you did not think you could win a championship with those guys anymore to go to this team. They welcomed you to the team. You had a big part in them winning. I'm not going to sit here and tell you some bus ride. I'm not doing that. But you obviously can't win without those guys. And a lot of your legacy and who we look at you like as a player stems from the fact that you were able to finally win in Golden State. To use just their stat sheet or how many points they average to diminish their value as basketball players or as champions when you yourself have championships in large part because you played with those guys. It's just low. It's just low. It's just not a good look. Again, it speaks to somebody that it looks like somebody that is detached from reality, which I think is kind of what Klay Thompson was saying. Like, are you good, bro? Like, what are you doing? Like, are we serious having this conversation about how good I am compared to Tyrese Maxey because I average 22 points? You have a championship because of me. You have 2 because of me. So, like, there's a lot of this to me that I look at it and I'm like, this is just sad. This is, like, ridiculous. I mean, the Sixers, on paper, yeah, they have a pretty good team. By the way, not that it matters. This is a stupid conversation, but didn't that team also have Andre Iguodala? Like he just ignored him. Another guy who was a multiple-time All-Star before he got there. Make sure I got this right. I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, Iguodala was there. You know, he wasn't the All-Star guy he was when he was in Philly, but he was still a very productive player. Iguodala may go to the Hall of Fame. Like, I don't know if he will, but he might. He's 4-time NBA champion. Like, so he didn't even mention him, but whatever. That's not neither here nor there. I guess to me, it's just weird for somebody who owes so much of his basketball like success and legacy to so quickly be willing to diminish their accomplishments and their contributions to that team. Again, just a psychoanalysis of somebody that would do that. It looks like somebody who is a narcissist. That's what it looks like. Which is why, again, I go back to like not necessarily like an anger or like because people are angry about this. It's like I don't know. I just hope Kevin Durant's okay. Like this is bad. This is weird stuff. Like. Even if these points made sense, why would you make the points? I've never seen. I think about so many of these old timers talking about the game of basketball, and they like to say, "Oh, how would your team do against this team or that team?" I don't think I've ever once heard an old timer try to make a case that his team couldn't beat some other team, ever. Like, think about that. Like, whenever they ask, oh, like, Scotty, how would your 96 Bulls do against the Golden State Warriors? Whether you agree with him or not, he's always going to say, oh, yeah, no, we would win because we would do X, Y, and Z. Or Magic, how would your 80s Lakers do against, you know, the Thunder? And he would make a case for how they're going to beat the Thunder. Like, all the time. I'm trying to think of a time. I can't think of a time where somebody was like, nah, we be smoked. Oh, yeah, 7-3 Warrior, they would smoke us. That doesn't happen because you're a competitor. The reality is you always think you're going to try to find a way to win, especially if you're a competitor at these guys' levels. You guys won championships. They were the best teams for the years that they played. Nobody beat them. So that also told me something about Kevin Durant's head. That, like, he went to this. That he decided, oh, no, actually, we're not as good. What competitor admits to defeat when having these like hypothetical conversations? It never happens almost. So man, that part of it was weird. And then just from a basketball standpoint, it also speaks to me why Kevin Durant has never been able to win once he left the Warriors, because he really, for someone who obviously knows basketball, you have to know basketball to be as good as he is. I don't think he really knows team building. I don't think he really knows like roster building or what makes teams win championships. I think he thinks if you put together just the most bucket getters and the most quote unquote talent, that is all you need. And I think he's somebody that said, like, you know, when they've asked him about defense, he's like, defense only can get you so far. Like, the best offensive player will always be able to score against the best defensive player. Like, that's just his viewpoint on basketball. So him diminishing Klay Thompson's value to just he averaged 22 points a game, like, that's like bad. Like, 22 points a game is really good. He's doing it on the Warriors. He's not like he was playing like Jaylen Brown right now, averaged 29 points. He was playing on a Celtics team that didn't have anybody else. He wasn't averaging 29 points when Jason Tatum was there. So, like, Tyrese Maxey averaged 30. Yeah, he was averaging 30 because Joel Embiid was missing half the time. He wasn't averaging 30 when Joel Embiid was winning MVPs. So, like, it's somebody that doesn't really know. I don't know if he really understands, like, the team concept. Like, I clearly, because you just pointed to Draymond Green, 14 points, Klay Thompson, 22 points. Therefore, they're not as good as guys who average 29 and 30. I'm like, you don't understand basketball as a team game. You understand it as, like, this is 2K and attributes. And, like, in some ways it makes sense because he is so gifted as an offensive player. And his attributes are so high. He is somebody that is valued in his career, his ability to improve his individual game and be as versatile a scorer as possible and as unguardable as possible. It makes sense that he would value that, but that's just not how the win-loss record gets determined in the regular season or in the postseason. It is not the only determination. And just collecting the most guys that can put up the most points or have the biggest bag is not a determination of who wins championships. It never has been. It's why super teams have been formed and some of them have failed. So I don't know, man. This was just bizarre and weird. Like, he's trying, like, but he's doing all this because it still bothers him that people look at his move from the Thunder to the Warriors as soft, and people look at his move from the Thunder to the Warriors as something that was unbecoming of one of the best players in the NBA. That he shouldn't have been trying to join a 73-win team as a free agent when he was already an MVP caliber player. It's just and he still can't live with that. And what I will say is, listen, I'm not in his mentions, I'm not in his DMs. Is it possible he's every day getting, like, reminded about how people think he's a bus driver, or that he, like, got 2 cheap rings? Probably. I'm not even gonna say maybe. I'm saying probably. That probably is the case. And if that is your reality, and you're as good as Kevin Durant, maybe it's hard to live like that when you feel like you've accomplished basketball's ultimate goal and continue to have it thrown in your face that it needs to be diminished. But I think the answer to that should not have been to diminish his own former teammates. It was whack. It just was weak. And again, to be talking about this thing that happened 10 years ago and still trying to make a case for why it wasn't that bad, because somehow it would make you look better. It's all a bad look. It's all a bad look. Again, and the problem too is that he also has all these sycophants who will say, "Oh, Kevin Durant's right about everything," because they like the fact that he engages in social media and they like the fact that he engages in our GOAT debates, in our basketball debates. And there's an aspect of it again that is fun, that is cool. Like, I'm not even gonna deny that, but he has this sense of he has this sense of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's an arrogance and there's a know-it-allness about how he talks about basketball. And to be clear, listen, we're just shooting the crap when it comes to talking sports. Maybe we all come across that way. Maybe it really is just like us. But he also is the first person that will waive the fact that, well, I'm an all-time great player, so therefore I'm always going to be right thing. When he's been wrong a lot. He's like, oh, I'm joining the Nets because this is the place to be and whatever. And I need to be with Kyrie because this is a great fit. And it was a joke and a disaster. And, he talked about how he let Kyrie go on a podcast talking about they didn't need a coach, and he co-signed that, and then they had to fire Steve Nash. This guy's been so wrong. He basically kicked and screamed to be sent to the Phoenix Suns, went there, couldn't change anything, team somehow got worse. There never is any real self-reflection from Kevin Durant about, his part in any of his failures, which is why he can't understand when people even dare to question his opinions, why people feel the question. That's well, yeah, because we don't believe you. You need more people. Like it's just a funny thing, man. But again, I hope he's good. Like I'm serious. Like again, the time to get angry at him, argue with him, fight with him, talk about his legacy. That stuff is done. I think I don't wish somebody to be this conflicted about their own career when they've accomplished so much for the sake of like a sports debate. You know, because this is it. This is the point where it's just weird. And he's had multiple points where I'm like, yo, this is weird. And this is just another example of that. Like, it was one thing when he was, you know, for some reason, I don't know why. This almost feels worse than like the burner thing. Like the burner thing was bad, but like, you know, the other reality is he's somebody that doesn't want to stand on his business when it comes to a lot of his really most controversial opinions. So he, just like Aaron Rodgers, he hides behind a burner or lies, whatever. But so for some reason, this like struck me as even more sad because this is his greatest achievement. Like that's the thing. Like I'm trying to think of why. Like when it came to the Rockets stuff, they were a pretty good team. By the midpoint of the season, you know, I don't think that anybody was like done with them, but there was a little bit of like, man, we thought this would be a little better. And you wanted this crush, like, you know, what's the name? You know, Jabari Smith and those guys. Like, it's like, all right, like those are your current teammates. You could handle that however you want to handle that. Like, I don't know. But to go back in time to like, I'm actually gonna crush guys that I won with, like Rockets, he didn't accomplish anything with. He just met these guys. So like, that was one thing to go. I'm gonna go back 10 years and crush guys who I joined and who welcomed me and sacrificed for me, and then I won championships. And I'm going to go back that time to diminish them, to prop up some random team that has nothing to do with me. It's not even his team. It'd be almost different if he was playing for the Sixers. He's not even playing for the Sixers. He doesn't root for the Sixers. He's not from Philadelphia. Like, what is he even talking about? It's sad stuff. It really is. I'm gonna be real with y'all. My voice is like struggling, as you guys can hear. I'm fighting through this pretty aggressively, trying to get through this show. I'll probably only do a few more minutes or so. I want to thank you guys for checking out this edition of 40 Days and Counting. I am scheduled, saying scheduled because of how I feel right now. I'm scheduled to be on WFAN tomorrow, Saturday into Sunday night, 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. I'll be real. I need my voice to feel a lot better now than it does right now for me to do that show. I'll probably talk to my bosses soon about that. But that's the plan. So if you want to check me out on Fan, check me out on there. Again, WFAN, 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. Download the Odyssey app. Or of course, 101.9 FM, where you'll find us. We're also in September, by the way. Not yet, but in September we're going to Sirius, which is going to be really cool. So we'll have a Sirius channel as well. But if you want to catch me on the Fan, again, hopefully my voice will be a lot better. I'll have, 30 plus hours by then. There's a chance maybe I'll feel better. Hopefully I will. But you can check that out again. Saturday into Sunday night. If I don't end up hosting, of course I'll announce that I'm off the schedule because of sickness. But that's an important thing to note for this weekend. So yeah, I only do a couple more minutes. I know I mentioned the Kawhi thing. I might hold that for next week. See if we get any more details. On the Kawhi thing quickly though, I mean, Pablo Torre podcast comes up with another secret endorsement that he has with the manufacturing company that does the Jumbotron for the Clippers. Like the people who made the Jumbotron for the Intuit Dome. I didn't even know they could do endorsements, but apparently that was the problem, was that they actually don't do endorsements typically, because they don't sell to like normal consumers or like the public. So why would you need to have a famous person endorse you when you're only dealing with famous people? Like you're dealing with the Cowboys and the Clippers and like, the Yankees. Like why would you need to talk? Why would you need a celebrity to endorse them? But Kawhi apparently had a secret multi-million-dollar deal with this company that, once again, according to Pablo Torre's sources, former Clippers executives, was another way to circumvent the cap, apparently. It seems like, given the story I saw, that it seems like there is an investigation, and the NBA is aware of it. So we'll see what and I say that for those who didn't see the story. I'm sorry, that low story sucks. I say that because of like the way when Pablo Torre's team tried to reach out to the company to get more answers, they ended up being like yo-yoed back and forth between lawyers and PR crisis management teams, who then like made it clear they were aware of the Wachtell investigation. That's the law firm that's making the sorry about that. That's the law firm that's making the Kawhi Leonard investigation, and that's now wrapped up and kind of coming together with its findings. So the NBA probably already knows about this. We didn't know about this, so this would add on to the aspiration issue. The other issue that was unearthed a couple weeks ago about how they were circumventing the cap in other ways, allegedly, and now this other secret endorsement deal. So we'll see what plays out with that. Finally, man, before I get out of here, Spider-Man Brand New Day. That's not Spider-Man Brand New Day. That is a loader from last week. Probably apologies for that. I'll fix that. But Spider-Man Brand New Day, record-breaking box office start. Biggest domestic box office in the history of cinema, which is crazy if you think about that. It's a long time, obviously. Movie, of course, starring Tom Holland, Sadie Sink, Mark Ruffalo, John Bernthal, Zendaya, Jacob Batalon. I thought the movie was phenomenal. I watched this movie. I got to see it early in the week, last week. I was lucky. I got to see it last Tuesday, or Wednesday rather, so a day before the Thursday preview. I said it on my X account where I posted a review. I also posted it on Instagram. This was an awesome movie. Definitely one of the best Spider-Man movies. Loved every aspect of it. Really good in telling like I love that they told a contained story that somehow still like really built upon and embraced the world that's been created by the MCU. It's a very slippery slope, and it's a very thin rope to tightrope, and they found a way to do it. So I was very impressed by that. I love this movie. Again, we'll have a bigger review from the Generation Media. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you, of course, subscribe to the podcast channel, Generation Podcast Network. I love this movie. I'm surprised though how crazy this box office has been. I think it speaks to a couple things. Number one, Spider-Man is still a cultural phenomenon and icon, unlike maybe even I anticipated. You know, this is the fourth movie for Tom Holland. Like, this is not a new thing anymore. It's new in the sense that it's a different director. And I think, enough word of mouth got around about Jean Grey being in this movie that perhaps maybe drummed up a lot of hype. I was surprised that it drummed up this much attention and this much anticipation to where people wanted to be there day one and the first weekend to make sure to see it. I think it also speaks to the strength of the X-Men. If there's any doubt or any question about how much Marvel's life will be changed when they are finally able to fully embrace the X-Men, this should have ended all doubt. Because as big as this Spider-Man number is, and it is huge, it's also very clear that this is also a number that's been inflated by, and I say inflated not to suggest that, it's artificial. It's just inflated in the sense that it's just the ceiling was higher. It was inflated by people who felt like, I can't miss this movie because of the rumors that then became confirmed that Sadie Sink is playing Jean Grey, and therefore this is our first new member of the X-Men that's being introduced. We of course did have Charles Xavier show up in Doctor Strange, and we had Wolverine show up in Deadpool and Wolverine, but those were Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman, who already were those characters. This is a brand new Jean Grey. This is what the future is going to look like for Marvel. Clearly that word of mouth got out enough and showed how much people are starving for X-Men content by the MCU. And we know they did. That's why, Disney paid $56 billion to get this property back, to buy the Fox library. A big part of that was to get these characters. They made that very clear. And after a rough, multiverse phase, I'm looking at the Mutant Saga, which is set to begin probably after Secret Wars, and I think Marvel might be back if they get this stuff right. But they gotta get stuff right. Like, they can't screw up the X-Men, but they get it right. And this movie is an indication to me that they're in good shape. Then there's a lot of excitement to happen over at Marvel. Crazy numbers for Spider-Man Brand New Day. All right, guys, that's all I got. I gave y'all my all. I'll be real, this is a hard one. Hard one because of health, but I wanted to make sure I got it done. 40 days and counting. Well, thank you guys so much for checking me out. Again, of course, make sure you follow me on social media. So first of all, subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. Make sure you like this video. Comment in the comment section. All the things help. Make sure you also, of course, follow me on social media. EJ_Stewart on X. Action EJ on Instagram and TikTok. We're streaming live on Instagram, Action EJ. Streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. Also, be sure to check me out, obviously, on Buzzer. Just head over to buzzer.com, the BZZR mobile app. Make sure you check me out there. And I'll see you guys next week, man. Again, I got a show on the Fan coming up. Again, let's hope I sound a lot better than this. Otherwise, there won't be a show, I don't think. But I'm glad I was able to come and do this stuff. So thank you guys again for checking me out. I'll see you next week, next Tuesday. Another edition of 40 Days and Counting. Again, be on the lookout for Hero Talk coming soon. I'm EJ Stewart. Hope I get better. Send me well wishes. Later, guys.